You are listening to the Techie Leadership Show with Bogdan and Andrei.
Hello and welcome to the Techie Leadership Show. Today with me I have Kenneth Vogt, and he is a man who has been there and done that. He had the stodgy title at a traditional company, controller for a manufacturer, a sexy title at a splashy company, principal solutions architect for a fabulously successful.com, but mostly he has been an entrepreneur for over 35 years. A long time, Kenneth. And Kenneth created one of the first e-commerce websites for a Fortune 500 company way back in 1997, and he has rode the internet ever since. Having worked in entrepreneurial enterprises large and small, he is uniquely qualified to provide clarity about what it takes to create, run, and even recreate life-sustaining businesses. Hi, Kenneth.
Hi, how you doing?
Good. You?
I'm great.
You know the first question I have. let's before I ask you if you want to add anything, is what do you mean by recreate life-sustaining businesses? That really caught my imagination. Like recreate, okay, you can create them, run them, but recreate, what happens?
Sure. Well, there was a time in recent history where being in business meant that you were practically had to be a carnivore. It was kill or be killed, and you did whatever you had to do to stay alive.
Oh yeah.
And it meant that ethics were of secondary consideration. But something has shifted in the world, and now it's actually becoming useful to businesses to be good citizens themselves and to have morals and to exhibit their ethics in the world. And you even see it in some marketing campaigns these days. I mean, I see something like Subaru. Subaru is all about love. Well, that's an interesting thing to say about a motor vehicle, but it's right in their marketing because they've recognized there's a value in this. And that's just one example of a big company, but there are many big companies and small companies that are realizing that what's going to keep them going and is going to make them stay alive is that they're doing good in the world, and that it's not just that somebody got their money's worth, but that they're leaving a footprint that's going to be beneficial after they're gone.
Boy, am I glad I asked that question. And do you want to add anything else about yourself?
Well, it's just, as you noted, I have been around for a while, but I definitely am young at heart, and I've made sure that I keep working with younger people because I love the prospects for the future. I want to see everybody be able to do the things that weren't possible to be done before. And I mean, so much has changed just in technology, but a lot has changed in attitude. So now that there are some possibilities that never existed before, and I probably won't live long enough to do them, but you will, and other people that are a bit younger will. I mean, it's not like it's multi-generations away. It's close. So you want to be a part of it.
Well, I, for one, want to, at least in my lifetime, to drive a flying car.
Yeah, we were promised this stuff, which that should have happened like at the century.
Yeah, it's already late. So I don't know what happened, but I'm still dreaming about one.
Exactly.
Especially each time I sit in traffic, I say, if we could only fly. And
well, it's going to be a self-flying car when it happens. Understand that.
And Kenneth, with what story would you like to start? What would be your cup of poison? The success story or the failure story?
I can go either way. Ask me your questions and I will answer.
Let's mix them up. Let's start with the leadership failure story. What would that be?
Okay. There was a .com that I was deeply involved in from 1999 to 2001, and it was kind of a breakout for me. I had worked for myself for forever up to that point, and with the the gig as a controller for a company for 3 years
Yes.
in the middle there. But I didn't think I was ever going to go back to working for somebody else. But with what was going on in Silicon Valley then, it was just too exciting. And the opportunities were too vast. And so I signed on with this company called Octane Software. And what they did at the time was somewhat revolutionary among enterprise level software. It's not
Okay.
something you probably know about now, but at the time it was really cool. And there was so much opportunity going on. And in Silicon Valley itself, there was so much going on. And
Yes, it
all these
is.
companies were interconnected. And so it was just a wonderful, wonderful experience. But the person who was the CEO of this company, his name is Tim Galleri. And Tim Galleri
Okay.
was just a wonderful, wonderful leader. He did a great job. He was extremely inspiring. People loved the guy. He was as hardworking as you could possibly imagine. And now he's a managing director for one of the large venture capital firms in Silicon
Okay.
Valley called Sierra Ventures. But it was great to watch him. And I have an anecdote of him that's pretty funny. When he was actually doing some of the sales calls at one point early on because everybody was just slammed. There was just too much to do. And he was a step up kind of guy. So he probably hadn't slept in 2 days and had to do a presentation with software that was just barely functioning yet. We're selling stuff,
Yeah,
like on the promise it's going to be done by the time we have to install it.
I know the feeling. I know it.
Yeah. So he was in a meeting, a big meeting with some major players of a Fortune 500 company, and somebody asked him the question, and his response was yes. What was the question?
Okay.
But that was who he was. That's who he is. He's a guy. He's a guy who says yes, and we'll figure it out after that. And he's very self-effacing. He told that story to people, so it's I'm not letting out any dark secrets here. But that was the kind of guy you wanted to follow. You thought, he's willing to step up and work hard. He's willing to, he's got vision, but he's got optimism that it's going to work out, and he trusted his people. And we all felt that. We all felt like he believes we're going to step up, so we're going to step up.
Well, if that's like the failure story, I cannot wait for the success one.
Oh, I'm sorry. I heard it wrong. Okay, well.
I had the feeling. I had the feeling that was the success one. Okay. It's okay. We'll go in order.
Need you to pay attention. I'm sorry. I misunderstood. Yeah. Okay. When it comes to failure stories, this is the other thing, man. During the dot-com time, there was so much failure going on, you just couldn't believe it. And it wasn't all this wonderful failure that got put up like, oh, you need to fail many times to succeed. It's like, no, these people are just going to fail and keep failing because they just wouldn't be instructed by fundamentals. There's some stuff that just is. It's not going to change. Human nature is not going to morph dramatically quickly. So there's just some stuff that's always there. You got to be profitable. You got to provide a service that's worth the price. I mean, just basic stuff that you wouldn't even have to go to business school to learn. You probably could figure it out from high school. And yet people were thinking, oh, it's a new paradigm. We can do anything we want. We can be crazy about it. And it's the thing that really bugged me about some of them was there were some really great ideas out there, some things that were really going to be valuable. And there's one company, and I hesitate to name them because they went under, but they had a great idea, and now that great idea is being done by multiple companies. And
okay.
And it's just, they could have been the ones, but they just weren't paying attention to reality. And sometimes you just have to accept that. Even with optimism, you still have to see that, I don't yet know how to walk on water.
Yes. And that's an important thing because sure, failure is good as long as you learn from it. and the most important part of it is the learning. If you
The hard part,
rebuild,
though,
you
you
start.
hope to live long enough to learn it, because sometimes that failure kills you, and so
Yeah.
you gotta be careful about this earnestness to fail. Let's not fail too much.
Yeah, and it's also like sometimes you hear like fail big. Well,
Yeah,
sometimes if you fail too big, there's no coming back from
yeah,
from
you
all
burn
the
a lot of
collateral
bridges that
damage.
way. And I mean, it's understandable if you had a big vision and you had people backing you, knowing that there was high risk. That's one thing. If that fails, but if you fail because you're just taking chance after chance after chance, that's not vision. That's foolhardiness. It's recklessness.
Sometimes after 1, 2, 3 failures, you better stop and look in the mirror, and maybe you'll see the reason there.
Yeah, exactly. There's some guy that's always there every time I fail, and it's me.
What's the common denominator? And do some soul searching and see how can you improve, because if there's no change in you cannot expect to create something different the next time.
Exactly.
You're going to have the same habits.
That's right.
35 years of entrepreneurship. What would be your leadership philosophy after all this time?
Okay. So the first thing I would say to somebody is that you don't need followers to be a leader. Now, let me sound like it breaks the definition, but the fact is a leader is just a person in the lead. That's it.
Yes.
You don't find leaders by looking for a mob of followers and then figuring out who's in charge. The person who's in charge of that mob is often just a wrangler or a caretaker. And sometimes they're even an outright fraud.
Yeah.
Politics, for instance, that's an embarrassment of riches in this area.
Yeah, true.
Yeah. So aside from just being a leader does leading. It's an action that they take. And that's why one of the reasons I pointed to Tim Galleri as an example. He was a guy who took action. And it might not just be the labor of it. It might be the words or the thoughts or the concepts. He's somebody that's always talking. You were never in a silent room with him. He was always trying to put out
Nice.
there, constantly. And so, this is somebody then they're deep in their own realm, and they project it out, and they can't stop doing that. And you have to develop that habit. You gotta take action on what's rattling around in your head, because you may have some great ideas, but if you can't communicate them to people, it's going to be hard to turn them into reality. And most of us can't really achieve everything we hope to achieve alone. We're going to need help. We're going to need support. And the only way we're going to get it is if we can get the message out there.
Yeah, but if you cannot lead yourself first, it's hard.
Exactly.
Yeah, it takes, and it's basically the same skill. Sometimes it's harder leading yourself than leading other people, because if they're driven, it's easier. But you have to provide your own motivation to follow your own instructions.
Exactly, because you know what a fraud you are. you know where all the bodies are buried.
Exactly.
Chink in your armor. We have to obviously get past that and realize, something. The other people that succeed, they too have flaws, and yet they succeed. So there's no reason that you can't join them.
Yeah, exactly. And that's one of the reasons why I'm doing this show, to show like it's not perfect and it's okay to not be perfect, but to take action and the goal is to become better with time. It's not to stay the same.
Well, yeah, exactly. Be as good as you can be right now, and tomorrow, you better be better.
Yes. And for aspiring leaders, what would be your top 3 tips you would have for them?
Okay. First off, you have to have a mission. If you don't have a mission, something that just lights the flame in you, that just excites you, that makes you want to get out of bed in the morning, you're gonna burn out. You're gonna hit some walls, and go, you know what? Why am I bothering with this? Whereas if you have a mission, you're like, I don't care. I can take whatever comes my way because I see this thing. I want to bring it to reality. So that's one thing you got to do.
Yes.
If you don't have that yet, it's okay. But don't get started until you do. Look for it. Find it.
It's hard. It's hard to find your mission. It's not easy.
Well, it is, and I do work with some people on that kind of thing. But
sometimes
go ahead.
Sometimes you feel you found your mission and you start doing it, and you realize, no, I was wrong about this.
Oh, that's a wonderful thing. That is a wonderful thing. You know, and it's okay. It may open the door to what your mission will be, and maybe you had to go through that process to even see what your mission will be. But keep your eyes open. There's something there. The next thing you got to do is once you're operating on this, you have to honor your word. And I say honor your word rather than keep your word because sometimes, due to circumstances beyond your control, you can't keep your word. You want to, but honoring your word means that you do what you say you will do. And when you can't deliver on what you say you will do, you get in front of it. You tell people, you tell them early and often, I'm not going to make it. So here's what I'm doing about it. Or here's what I can do instead. Or I need help to make it. So please help me. That is honoring your word is very, very powerful. And people will give you the benefit of the doubt. You think, oh, I don't want to tell them that I'm going to fail. Well, guess what? They're going to know. They're going to find out sooner or later.
Yes.
So let them know early. And they're going to find out, you know what, this is a guy I can trust because if something's going to go wrong, I'm going to hear about it. I'm going to hear about it quickly, maybe in time to do something to help. Then the third thing I would say is you must exemplify humility. And that sounds like it's absolutely at the odds with being some kind of leader. Like, how can I be humble? Well, you have to be humble. Humility isn't saying that you're small or weak. It's saying, I don't know everything, or I don't have all the power in the universe. Sometimes I need some help. Sometimes I don't know the answers and I gotta get some input. When you're humble, again, as a leader, people see you as like, wow, he's for real. He's a human being. And you might think that all people won't want to follow somebody who's humble. Exactly the opposite is true. People love humility. They want to follow that. They trust somebody like that. So be that guy.
Who wants to follow somebody that's always bragging they're the best, they're the greatest? Everything they touch is a success, but everything the team touches, not so great.
Exactly. What do they need? What does he need me for? He's already perfect. And by the way, if anything goes wrong, I'm going to get blamed. Nobody wants to follow that.
Yeah. And the only way to honor your word is by being humble, because you have to be able to be open and say, look, I did everything. People have to see, to understand that I did everything in my power to achieve what I said I'm going to do. It's not working. How can you help me? And you have to be humble to be able to ask for help.
Exactly. And I will give you a bonus fourth point, and it's kind of related to this.
Oh, yeah.
The opposite thing of humility is pride. And I don't mean a healthy self-esteem. I mean pridefulness, thinking you're greater than you are. When you think you're greater than you are, you'll never ask for help. You'll never recognize your own flaws so that you can either improve them or get rid of them. Pride is immensely dangerous. And if you can set aside pride and instead replace it with humility, you will be far more successful.
Oh yeah, that is powerful stuff. And Kenneth, if you had to think about one book that had the most profound impact on you, what would that be?
And that was a tough question, because there's a lot of great books out there. But if I had to pick out one,
yes, one.
If I had to pick out one, the one I would call attention to is Power versus Force by David Hawkins.
Okay,
that was a really eye-opening book for me.
I am learning about so many good books that I didn't know about previously.
Yeah, David Hawkins he's a very interesting character. He's a PhD psychologist and MD, and yet the books he's written have all been, call them spiritual, but he's very much a scientist, and he did the paper that he did on this topic of power versus force. He did in association with another scientist who was a Nobel laureate. It's serious stuff. It's not all. Sometimes people are afraid of call it the woo-woo end of things, but this is a serious scientist too. And so whatever direction you're coming from, I think he's really got something interesting to talk about, and it can be appreciated by anyone wherever they're coming from, and it can really help you too, because if you're at a dark place, he shows you exactly how to get out of it. And he's a trained psychologist, so he's just on automatic for that stuff. But there's so much more than that. If you're in a good place, he will show you how to get to a blissful place. It's terrific.
And how did it help you personally? Like for yourself, how did it impact your life?
Well, one of the things he talks about is what he calls levels of consciousness. And I'm talking about actual measurable levels. And just realizing where I was on the scale and what was below me and what was above me really opened my eyes. And it made moving up the scale a lot easier. And it also made not falling into the lower ends of the scale a lot easier.
Yes.
Because you see it coming, going, I can head that off before I get to that place.
That's really good. That's really good. Now I'm more interested in reading the book, especially if it gives you like clarity or a way to evaluate yourself. So you can see exactly where am I, where I'm going, how can I get there.
Yeah, and he wrote something like 10 books, but this is the foundational book. It's the one to read. If you can only read one book by David Hawkins, Power versus Force is the one.
Perfect. And Kenneth, if people want to find out more about you, where should they go?
Well, my website is Vera Claritas. That's VeraClaritas. Vera Claritas means true clarity in Latin. That's the idea behind it. Yeah. There's quite a few articles on the website that would benefit anyone, but especially somebody who's an entrepreneur. And if you're a company founder and you have succeeded, that is, your company has survived, and you're getting to a spot where you're starting to wonder if the company is going to outpace you, where you're going to be sitting there one day going, you know what, I'm not qualified to run the company I started. Those are my clients. Those are the people I help. So if you find yourself in that spot or thinking you're going to get to that spot and would like to head it off, I would love to work with you. I do executive coaching for founders of companies, and I've met some wonderful and amazing people that way. And I think I could say that I've had a lot of success with them.
So if you're a founder or you know a founder who has a runaway success, maybe he's going to have the next unicorn around the block, and he is starting to be overwhelmed by the situation, reach out to Kenneth. He's going to help. That's his specialty. And it's an interesting specialty. I like it a lot.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun for me. I've been doing this for the last 7 years, and it all started because I was reading all of the blogs and all of the books of all kinds of entrepreneurs and leaders in that space and in coaching, but there were certain things I was just never hearing, that no one ever talked about.
Nobody was helping successful people.
Well, a lot of people were helping successful people, but there were certain things that I had learned over the years that I thought surely some of these experts would be providing, but they weren't. I thought, maybe I know some things I better share with the world before I die. So
great.
Exactly. So that's how this all started, and that's how I started writing articles for this. And there's 72 articles on the website on quite a variety of topics. But then I realized there was a system there, and I could take that and I could help people implement it, and especially the people I was drawn to help were those entrepreneurs who had started companies. That's
amazing, Kenneth. I want to thank you for coming on the show as a guest. It's been a pleasure talking with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye now.
That was today's episode. Tune in daily. Rate, like, subscribe, and share, please. Oh, you can find further info and materials in the show notes on techyleadership.com, including links to the guest book recommendations.